already.
Thanksgiving is next week.
No, let's not talk about
Good evening, and welcome to the Muscatine Board of Education School Board meeting for Monday, November 13th. Madam Secretary, would you take roll and determine a quorum, please?
Sure. Director Bauer?
Here.
DeBeat?
Here.
Drawbaugh?
Here.
Finn?
Here.
Mather?
Here.
McCarter?
Here.
Wildermuth?
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. If you would all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome all of our visitors this evening and our media representatives. We have lots of people in the audience, and it's nice to see lots of you here, so thank you for coming. Our next item on our agenda is our Student Council report.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Tom Renier, and I've been a student council this is my first year. We met before. I was here about 2 months ago, but what are you laughing at? Okay. So I will start out our report with Saturday, October 21st was our first annual Fall Bash Dance. It was held in the cafeteria and was neon/black light themed. Around 400 students attended the Fall Bash, $5 entrance fee, and even though the cafeteria location was new, it was still a big hit with the students, and as somebody who went there, I think it was a very big success. So November is also Food Drive Month, and we have 3 main events that these two will tell you about. The Can Ball, Mr. Muscatine, and the Can Drive.
Hi, I'm Kaylee Fear. We had Can Ball on November 2nd, and it's like a boys volleyball tournament. And the entrance fee was 5 cans or $3. We raised over $600 in 200 cans during the event. And then next Wednesday, we're having Mr. Muscatine, which is our boys pageant, which it's $5 per ticket, which will be donated to the food drive. And the contestants also raise money, and they'll participate in events.
The final part of our food drive is our can drive, and it's a new event this year, and students can bring in 10 cans, and we will also accept pet food, and you can bring in at least 10 cans per student, and it will give you a pass to leave campus for lunch on Friday, November 17th. And that is all.
Any questions for the Student Council before they sneak away?
Anything at all. I'm not shy.
Are you wanting last year's Mr. Muscatine to come pass his sash this year?
That would be great.
All right.
That would be great.
I have a connection. I'll help you out with that.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's always great to hear what's happening at the high school. We appreciate you all coming and sharing. Next up is our employee recognition portion of the meeting.
I would like to honor our November employees. So if Becky Anderson would please come forward. Becky was nominated by Katie Zitzo, and Katie says this: I nominated Becky because she not only does an amazing job of keeping our school clean, but she also cares deeply about the staff and students at Jefferson School. She always has a smile, a kind word, or a laugh for anyone who crosses her path. She looks for someone who needs a smile, and even when she is feeling down, gives others a reason to be happy. She loves our school with all her heart, and we would be lost without her. So congratulations, and thank you so much. Our next person is Bob Bailey. Mr. Bailey was nominated by Kendra Hill, and Kendra says this: Mr. Bailey is very supportive of other staff. He is a great go-to guy when concerns arise. He is a leader, a listener, and always finds time for others. When I have a student in distress, I refer them to his guidance first. But if they refuse, Mr. Bailey is the gentleman that I promote. He always knows which way to direct the situation, and his calm demeanor makes him an easy approach. He is much respected by his peers. Please consider Mr. Bailey for this honor. So we'll clap for Bob. If we could have Nancy Foxen come up. Nancy was nominated by Lindsay Welsh and Kristen Hazlett, and they say this. Nancy Foxen is one of the most positive people that I've ever met. She goes above and beyond to make everyone in our building feel important and appreciated. She is constantly giving our students positive reinforcement, and each one of them feel like a rock star in her classroom. She is also always the first person to go out of her way to show appreciation to our staff, whether it's a note in our mailbox or an awesome ticket taped to our door. Nancy wants everyone to love Mulberry as much as she does, and we are with her, and it's pretty darn easy. Kristen says this, I met Nancy Foxen about 12 years ago when I was a substitute and taught at L&M schools. She was a very welcoming and an energetic staff member that always made me feel welcome. It is a pleasure to have her teaching my children art now. In August, I was approached to temporarily teach art at Franklin. I do not have much formal art education, but Nancy was more than willing to help me get the essentials down with only a week to prepare before school started. She visited me on her own time and helped me to sort through supplies as well as give me tips for the classroom and for traveling with art on a cart. She has the most unmatchable upbeat attitude ever. She selflessly has given me access to all of her projects and all of her resources. She has risen above and beyond in mentoring when she didn't even have to. Her heart is in it for students. I am so appreciative of her remarkable energy and wisdom. The hallway at Mulberry looks especially fantastic this year thanks to her creative touch and time. She is teaching our kids much more than art by modeling what a little care, creativity, and effort can accomplish. Amy Justice. Amy is an instructional coach at West Middle School, and she was nominated by one of her peers. Amy Justice wears many hats at West Middle School. She teaches a pre-AP ELA class, mentors multiple beginning educators of those new to the district, works as an instructional coach in all subject areas, runs needed data for teachers and principals, attends all suggested trainings, serves on the building leadership team, assess all subject areas in PLC, and is always available to support West as needed. She is always student-focused and available to parents as a viable resource. She is extremely knowledgeable and passionate about education. Muscatine Community School District is very fortunate to have Amy Justice as a teacher leader in our district. And next we have David Svensson, and I believe David just became a dad a couple days ago, so we know where he is. But he was nominated by Jamie Pugh, and Jamie says this, I would like to nominate David Svensson for all that he does for the teachers and students at Franklin. David is in his second year of teaching at Franklin. He has a wide range of skills and provides a unique perspective as he has taught overseas. David is the first one to lend a helping hand and works well beyond his reading teacher title. The students at Franklin connect with him as a positive male role model in their life. He has special bonds with many of our students with behavior issues, and David can be seen picking tomatoes at recess with one student or explaining the stock market to another. Our students are very lucky to have him. David's skill with technology and data have been very useful as well. Currently, he serves on our building leadership team and works closely with the first grade team in helping build essential early literacy skills. I know David is very deserving of this recognition, and I know he will continue the great work no matter what. Thank you. Thank you.
The next section of our agenda is our Citizen Speak portion of the agenda. This is an opportunity where anyone may address the board. I would ask if you would step to the podium and state your name and address for the record. I would ask if you would limit your comments to 3 minutes, and please bear in mind that as part of our board policy, we are not able to respond to your comments during a meeting. We always encourage, though, if you ever need to reach out to board members for more of a dialogue, you're welcome to do that at any time. And nobody's going for the podium. All right. Next on our agenda is a fine arts presentation, and I think that Teal Burford is here with some students.
Good evening, Dr. Reby and members of the school board. We are here tonight to share some great news with you. On Saturday, October 21st, 50 members of the MHS Music Department traveled to Washington High School in Washington, Iowa, to represent MHS in the community at auditions for the All-State Music Festival. They began their day at 7 a.m. on a bus, and when we returned at 8:30 p.m. to MHS, 17 of our students had found success. We'd like to present to you the All-State students from Muscatine for 2017. Some of these folks were not able to come tonight because they are actually at an event with Mr. Hyde this evening. So, Brian Prusman on euphonium, Ethan Shearer on trombone, and Odysseus Orr on the trumpet. From orchestra, Brissa. Is Brissa here? Okay, Brissa Echeverria, Lauren Kundle on string bass, Jack Eichelberger, also on string bass, and Isabel Hartman, also on string bass. And Brissa Echevarria is also string bass. All 4 of Mr. Thoma's private students were chosen for All-State. From orchestra, I just did orchestra. From choir, Leah Shield, Mackenzie Lofgren, who was unable to join us tonight, Siri Aubrey, Jerry Mungara, Maddie Beber, Lizzie Shield, Zeke Ellis, Drake Rudolph, and Josh Larry. Guys, face the board. now back up. There you go. Selected as an alternate was Jalen Klein on soprano. Some of our students are enjoying a performance at the University of Iowa tonight and couldn't be here. Mackenzie Lofgren, a soprano all-stater, has a rehearsal in the Quad Cities for a professional show she's performing in and also wasn't able to join us. Being selected to participate in All-State is a great accomplishment that required diligent individual and group practice and commitment, both during and outside of the school day. As a department, one of our challenges is finding enough rooms for students to use for practice. Who can attest to that? Hey. With only 3 practice rooms and upwards of 20 students seeking spaces, the students must get creative to find spaces to practice throughout the day. As you can tell by Odysseus Orr's performance last month, and the students you will continue to hear at these meetings throughout the year, they find a way. As part of our presentation tonight, the choir students are going to perform 3 of our cuts from the All-State audition day. Orchestra students, you can have a seat. Choir students, back up just a little bit. Go ahead and get in formation, arc up. They will be performing from 3 pieces. They actually had 5 cuts, if I'm not mistaken. They are going to be singing from a movement from Brahms' Requiem. That's going to be our first cut. The second cut will be from Mac Wilberg's Cindy, a setting of Cindy, the folk song. I don't know if you're familiar with that. And they will end with a cut from The Best of Rooms by Randall Thompson. Go ahead, guys. I want to thank the students for their time. I know several of you need to get back to a rehearsal. So please feel free to slip out. I'm going to finish speaking with the school board. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Great job.
The band and orchestra students will travel to Ames to audition for seat placement on Thursday, November 16th. So these two lovely ladies just slipping out here, they still have yet another audition ahead of them, as do our band students. Then all three All-State ensembles will begin rehearsals for the All-State Festival on Friday, November 17th and Saturday, November 18th. They will perform a concert at 7:30 p.m. in Hilton Coliseum on the ISU campus in Ames on Saturday, November 18th. This concert will be recorded and broadcast for all to watch on Iowa Public Television on Thanksgiving evening, November 23rd, and again on Sunday, November 26th in the afternoon. We'd like to further update you by sharing that the MHS Marching Band earned its 13th consecutive Division I rating at State Marching Festival on October 18th, and on November 4th, the marching band performed with the University of Northern Iowa Panther Marching Band at halftime of the UNI game, and the band made a special appearance at Hy-Vee just this past weekend for Veterans Day. In the choir program, I just finished auditioning an excellent jazz group and barbershop quartet. The department is preparing for several performances. Friday, December 1st, Jazz Etc. will be performing at a luncheon at Wesley Church and later at the Muscatine Holiday Stroll, where auditioned acts from the choral department will perform for the community downtown at CBI Bank and Trust. Band and orchestra students will also perform in different areas of downtown. We have 2 choir concerts coming up in December, one of which is a joint collaborative concert with the MHS Chamber Orchestra under the direction of the incomparable Jonathan Thoma on the 15th at Saints Mary and Matthias Catholic Church. I think that's mine. Sorry. You may see some signs around town in the coming days advertising this performance, as Mike Shield very graciously designed a poster free of charge for us. On December 11th, our freshman, concert, jazz, and barbershop choirs will be performing a holiday concert in the auditorium at 7:30 to musically wrap up our second quarter. Ahead, we have musical auditions at the end of November, the River City Show Choir Invitational in January, show choir competitions, national anthems, the University of Iowa Honor Choir, Singing Valentines, a trip to St. Louis, State Jazz Choir, State Solo Ensemble Competition, musical performance, Solid Harmony's annual nursing home tour, and of course, our concerts in February and May.
That's all?
That's it, so far. The orchestra had its 8th consecutive year of enrollment growth this year. With a student enrollment of 123 students, the MHS Orchestra program is the largest in the state of Iowa for any high school. The orchestra continues to present performances around the community, including the United Way's Vintner's Dinner, quartet outreach at school, and community functions, as well as providing students to perform with the Muscatine Symphony Orchestra. The orchestra has upcoming concerts, the first being on Tuesday, December 5th. That concert will feature our freshman, Philharmonic, and symphony orchestras. It is at 7:30 p.m. at MHS, and again, that's Tuesday, December 5th, if you want to catch that. Our final concert of the semester will be on Friday, December 15th. The concert will feature our chamber orchestra with our choir program. That's the program that I was mentioning before. That's at 7 p.m. at St. Mary and Matthias Church. As mentioned before, the music department will be appearing around downtown at the Stroll on December 1st. Thank you, everyone, for your time and allowing us to update you on what's happening in the music department this month.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Teal. Well, whoever gets to follow that is tough. The next item on our agenda we have our board targets listed. Jerry, do you have something for each one of those before I?
Well, not necessarily for each one of those. Becky is going to share some information from our fast testing. As we want to try and keep these goals up front of everyone as we go through the year. And so I'll let her share a lot of good news.
Yeah.
Are you going to sing this report to us?
Yeah.
I always wanted to, but now is probably not the time. Yeah. Okay, so along with myself and Mike McGrory, we have some exciting news to celebrate and to share with you. So you have a copy of this year's Fall FAST scores. So you can see we had an incredible positive percentage gain. If you look at the bottom, you'll see overall MCSD. Fall of 2016, our students tested at benchmark. We had 56% of our students came in on benchmark. This fall, we had 65.32% of our students test at benchmark or above. That is an overall increase gain of 9.16%. This is really, really exciting. You can see above the MCSD, you see all of our 7 schools. All 7 schools had an increase of anywhere from 2.5% all the way up to an 11.35 gain. So we're super excited about this. And you might be wondering, well, gosh, how did this happen? Well, some reasons that we kind of correlate this success is that obviously we have a new Journeys curriculum. Last year was the first year of full implementation, and so we continue to be in year 2. We also have some supplemental intervention resources through the Journeys. They are being utilized K-5. We also this year, our Title I reading teachers, they're providing intensive supports for K-2 students in regards to reading. We're also providing wraparound services for our K-2 kiddos too. We also are providing PEP plans, which are personalized education plans. Basically, these plans track goals and the progression of goals towards mastery for all students that receive support from our Title I reading teachers. So we feel all of this is definitely showing some extreme growth through FAST. Our next testing window will happen in January, and then our last testing window happens in the spring in May. And then we have some exciting news to share with you in regards to our chronic absenteeism.
Thanks, Becky.
You're welcome.
Similar to our FAST scores, we're really excited to share with the board. As you know, last year we had some really nice progress with chronic absenteeism. We reduced it dramatically at most of our buildings. So we're measuring, what I'm sharing with you this evening is kind of an update of how we're doing this year so far. So at the end of the first quarter, this is kind of a snapshot. And again, what's kind of exciting, as much as we reduced it last year overall, you can see that our schools are doing a fantastic job again overall of reducing it so far the first 40 days. As you look down there at the bottom, overall our district is down probably about 3.5% from where it was at last year in chronic absenteeism. But you can see some of our schools have had a very dramatic decrease, like Mulberry. Look at Central Middle School. Central Middle School is probably almost down about 10% from where they were at last year. And so we're really excited about the results so far. And again, we attribute a lot of it to just a coordinated effort with the community, a really strong focus on attendance at the building level, and they're doing some great things to motivate students to come to school. And then a district, I think that a lot of district supports, which we appreciate the board helping and being supportive of. And I think you're seeing some nice results so far, and we hope to continue that. You might notice with the high school, where they're at, one of the things we're working with the high school right now is ways to identify strategies to reduce their chronic absenteeism at the high school. So we're confident that we will get that number down significantly by the end of the year as well. So with that, I think Becky and I will entertain any questions that the board has.
Becky, these are obviously very encouraging numbers, and I'm thrilled to see them. How long is, 2 questions about the FAST. How long have we been doing the FAST testing, and do you know where the state kind of averages are?
The ELI, which is the Early Literacy Initiative, went into, I'm looking at my CPDLs, 4 years ago? So 4 years ago, and that was, came down from the state as a directive. So that was through the ELI Literacy Grant.
Okay.
And then state comparison, I can electronically send that to you if you'd wish.
That'd be great.
Okay. We can also, if you want a breakdown for each grade, this is a collapsed score, K-5. If you would like that by grade, I can also provide that to you electronically if you wish. Is that something you'd like?
Do you have
Okay.
the previous 2 years also, just so we can see?
Yep, we can provide that to you as well.
Great. One of the things that we, one comparative statistic that I think was really important is we were in the top, 2 districts for improvement in the state last year.
Yeah.
And so we had, I'm trying to remember the exact level of improvement.
It was a little over 16%.
Yeah, 16% improvement. So we the good news is that we're trending in the right direction.
Right.
And obviously continuing that's going to be critical, but that's it.
And I think that 16% increase put us right at, your question, Nathan, right at the state average.
Terrific, thank you.
Yeah, we were very close
Very
at
close,
the state
right.
average, which is the first time we've been close to that state average
Yep.
for a while. So that was also encouraging.
Very good. And you said 16% for that improvement, and you guys mentioned 3 percentage points on chronic absentee and 9 on the other, but it's more like 20% improvement. It's 9 percentage points, but you guys improved somewhat like 20% from
Right.
one year to the next.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
So it was more than the 3%, it's significantly more than.
It is, yeah. That's another way, yeah.
But that would sound like we're bragging.
It is a celebration.
We need to brag about that. That is good.
Yeah, it's a big jump versus
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
3 or 9. I mean, it's
Because along those contexts, like several of our schools reduced last year 50% chronic absenteeism.
right.
Yeah.
And we're doing it again on some of them. So,
Right.
Yeah.
and it's great to see the elementary. You'd think that would be the low-hanging fruit, so to speak, but the middle schools and getting that down as much as it's gone is tremendous. Just the high school is just, I'm sure you guys are scratching your heads.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we know we want to get that down as far as that. We can't sustain that percent.
Right.
Yeah. One of the interesting things also is, this may surprise the board a little bit, is that our highest rate of absenteeism is at kindergarten and first grade. And so we're really focused on that this year, is how we can get those numbers down. We're not quite sure. I think talking with a lot of people, the thought is that at the kindergarten level, maybe the priority of attendance among kindergarten students and parents maybe isn't as high for various reasons. And a lot of our buildings are doing a lot to try to emphasize that at those grade levels. So I think we're expecting to see a nice increase at kindergarten and first grade as well.
Do we track preschool?
We track it, but we do not have to report it.
Report it? Is that something that shows any indications of, starting even at that age?
That's a good question. I think because we only have a segment of our population that come to preschool,
Right.
that it's really hard to gauge. And the ones that probably are going, their attendance is pretty high because the parents want them there and so forth. But so it's a little hard to gauge that.
Well, it's very,
No, go ahead.
very encouraging news, and I think this is a reason for us as a district to celebrate, but also it's a reason for us to say thank you to everybody who was involved in reducing the rates of absenteeism and also, getting the FAST ratios to increase that much in some schools by 10% or 11%. So that's a great thing, and hopefully we'll see even much better news or hear much better news in the future too.
It's a real testament to our principals, our teachers, our support staff, and it really fits in nicely into this coherence book. And Michael Folan is going to be one of the keynote speakers at the School Boards Association. And one of the things that we talked about with our new administrators last week, we talk a lot about culture about a school and how important that is. And we talk a lot about having an improvement plan and how important that is. And what Folan would say is, those have to be so integrated, because if you have a school or any organization that you have a culture that is not collaborative, doesn't understand the need for change, that if you have that kind of culture, and if you don't have a fairly explicit plan, nothing happens. And if you have a culture that's not trusting, is not collaborative, and you have a very specific change process, you get resistance. But if you have a culture that has a high understanding for the need for change, very collaborative culture, and the plan is specific enough that they know what the expectations are, you get meaningful, in-depth change. We are in the process of getting that in-depth change. We are not there yet because it's still a work in progress. It takes time. But we're, thanks to the work that we have people out in the field and Mike and Becky, we are making real progress towards this. But it is an important thing to remember that so many things impact that culture. Things from working conditions to the political thunderstorms that can swirl around an organization, to all kinds of things can affect that. And that affects the implementation of the plan. So we're working hard to try and make sure that those come together and that we have that in-depth change.
Jerry, where have our free and reduced numbers been trending?
They have been fairly static at about, and I want to say it's around 53 something in number.
And I think, I will go back and stress the fact that our community needs to really know that we are going in the right direction. And as you mentioned, Jerry, it's collective work. It's work of, all pieces when they come together, we see excellent results like that everybody benefit from it. So I think it's time for us also to share this success and these data with the community.
I completely agree, and I don't think people sometimes completely understand the quality of things that are going on. Today at Rotary, I was at a table with a young man who's taking, I think, about 4 AP courses. He's taking a long distance course from Stanford on artificial intelligence. He has an internship at HNI. Is looking at 6 or 7 very elite schools. We have a fine arts program. I think 20% of one of the stringed portions of the orchestra, 20% of that will be Muscatine students. We may have 53% of our kids on free and reduced price lunch. We have the largest orchestra in the state. This speaks very well for what we can provide kids and what we can provide them to get ready for their future. And it speaks well for the community, speaks well for the people working with our kids. And we really do need to make sure people understand that this is a real opportunity.
And John, one of the things
Can I ask, how are we going to make this public then? What does that look like?
Well, that's kind of what we're working on, because any successful organization has a strong marketing program. Usually it means they also have a strong marketing department. And that's what we're working on, is how can we develop that, how can we get that word out. One of the things that needs to happen is we need to encourage folks that are in the system to talk about the positives in the system. I don't care what, if you're selling hamburgers or Cadillacs, word of mouth is maybe one of the best way to sell things. And so we need to make sure that we're constantly talking up and celebrating, because it's we can really provide the community, I think, a really good product.
But no, I think you guys are doing a great job in making it easy for us. People will ask you from time to time, how's it going on the board? And I've really had to say, well, it's going really, really well. It's really easy to be a board member right now, and we have everybody here to thank for it. And you guys, I'm thrilled.
Well, we have, Jill in HR is doing great work in bringing systems to that and bringing that up to speed with, so that we can access data and we have things that can be handled in a systemic way. Tom has done a great job of jumping in and filling some really big shoes, and we have not missed a beat. And and Becky and Mike are just a great team. We have some really good people right now working in our district, and when that happens, when you get people that are all on the same page philosophically, it's much easier to move the mission forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to just mention, the recruiting we're getting high caliber individuals coming to the district. I think this past year we had a lot of, we had a number of new employees, but they aren't all just right out of college. They were, had been in their careers for a while. And that shows a lot to the school and the community. And I think, it's not only the school, the attendance, that's great that we've done so much good things there. We need to thank the parents too, because we're doing the right things, and so they're bringing their kids to school. So convincing them how important that is part of it too. So thank you.
And to kind of follow up on John and Toby, your question, I think Becky and Jerry and I plan on bringing all the elementary staff together in the next couple of weeks to kind of celebrate this and get the word out and thank them for everything they're doing for these results. And like Jerry said, word of mouth from your staff is probably one of the most powerful things you can do to get the word out there.
That's kind of a secret.
Yeah.
Well, we had
No one held that.
we had a great video or presentation that you presented at the breakfast. Taking this and just adding to it is, just keep that going and keep it moving. There's nothing wrong with having that on the cable network every month or YouTube or wherever you want to put it. So.
And one last thing, I go and visit schools. I mean, for me, as a board member, one of my jobs, I feel like visiting our schools. And I always enjoy visiting schools for a very simple reason, because I do meet people who cares. And I think we are blessed to have those people who are working at whatever level. I mean, in every almost building that I visited, that I noticed that people who are there really care about the success of the students, and I think that's a big thing for us and for our district. Yeah.
Thank you, Becky and Mike. All right, the next item on our agenda is the portion of the consent agenda. So the following items are considered to be routine by the Board of Education and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a director so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence from the agenda. Those items are minutes, employment recommendations, student teaching agreement, policies, and bills and claims. What are the wishes of the board?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
And if I could just make one quick comment on the Cindy Miller, who is her resignation is in the employment recommendations, is been with the district for 28 years, been a loyal, faithful, highly competent employee, and she's going to be retiring, and we just wish her the very best.
Very much so.
She put up with me hanging out at her house when I was a kid, so.
She said she still wakes up screaming. I don't know. No, she will be missed.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, and the motion carries. Let's see, the next item on our agenda takes us to the request, the approval of administration authority to seek modified supplemental amount from the School Budget Review Committee, or the SBRC, for open enrollment out, not in fall 2016, and ELL served beyond 5 years. That's a lot. Tom, will you put that in layman's terms for us?
Okay. So there's two areas, as one of them being open enrollment out. So there were 28.6 students on our certified enrollment that just happened October 1st who were not on our open enrollment list last October. So because they are on a list this October, we still have to pay those districts for those students. So we're not getting, since they weren't included in the October of 2016 count, and we're getting funding for those kids this year, we need to have that as spending authority to send that money. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. We're getting the spending authority, but it's because those students are going to other districts. And the 0.6 comes from, in case you're wondering, a student that was homeschooled last year that is now going out to another district this year. So there's a 0.6 increase. And then the second area is English language learners served beyond 5 years. So during the certified enrollment process, we were granted authority for students that were in the first 5 years. And the state includes those in our additional weighting that's included in our funding formula. That's a combination of property tax, state aid. So that was 213 students, I believe. And so what the state has allowed us to do is we can count students that are in ELL beyond 5 years, and that's what we're asking for that authority for fiscal year 18, and that's what we're asking for tonight. And that would be an additional 140 students that are in our ELL program beyond 5 years. So we get an additional 0.22 for those students. So the open enrollment out piece was $188,502, and the ELL piece is $205,251. So if you don't have any other questions, I would recommend approving that authority. So
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Tom, do we know why we were denied the authority last year?
denied which authority?
The open enrollment out, we didn't.
So we weren't denied any authority for that. We're just asking for it now because those students were not on our count in October of 2016. They are on our count in October of 2017. So we are sending money to those districts for those students.
But we didn't miss an opportunity last year.
No, we did not miss an opportunity.
So the motion on the floor, it's been moved and seconded to approve both the SBRC, the open enrollment out, not in fall 2016, and the English language learner beyond 5 years piece. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries.
Just want to thank Tom for keeping track of all these things.
Yeah, boy.
Brian, thank you.
The next item on the agenda is to request the approval to establish an early retirement program for fiscal year 2018. That would include setting a deadline of January 3rd of 2018 with a presentation for board approval in January. Jerry, do you have any additional information you want to provide us on that?
Well, the plan that's being proposed is similar it is the same plan as that was offered last year. We've averaged, Jill did some work with this last week, about 28% around 28% of folks that are eligible have taken it the last 3 years, I believe. We would be projecting, if we had that 28% again, that we could possibly have as a savings of somewhere in the $200,000 to $225,000. As you know, our enrollment is down this year, so we're going to have a reduction in state monies, and we're kind of looking at about $1 million. This would take care of some of that shortfall. So it is as much a budget issue as it is a retirement issue. It's a benefit to employees, but it's really our benefit is that we would know very early in January who's planning on coming back, so we can start making plans. Because we've been very effective. When you think of what the board has been able to, reduce our spending significantly over the last 4 or 5 years. And we really haven't had to lay anyone off because we've been able to manage it different ways. And if we know early enough, and we can move both certified and classified people into positions so we don't have to lay off folks. That's what we need to do. So the early commitment of January 3rd allows folks to have the time that's required by law for them to contemplate this, gives them a couple of holiday times to work with family and meet with financial advisors or retirement specialists, whoever they may, so they can make the best decision for themselves and for their families. But I would really recommend, this is one way we can manage some expenditures and at the same time recognize some of the folks have been with us for quite a while and invested their careers with us.
How many did you say, maybe I missed it, how many individuals are eligible?
Jill, do you remember, I'm trying, there were 2.5 pages. So there's probably about 60? Yeah.
That's about average.
Yeah.
Sure, you mentioned $1 million again,
Yeah.
and I know we've had the declining enrollment for a couple of years
Yeah.
now. So is that another $1 million on top of the
Right.
one? So
Yeah, so this, that's why, now we'll have some budget guarantee and we'll have some, those things, and, but we're still going to have to find some ways to make our budget more efficient, and one of the things we can't afford to do right now as we're making some real strides forward is we don't want to look at, cutting programs and eliminating things that are really what some of the guiding energy behind where we're going. So, a little over 80% of our budget is people. So if we can best manage our people and get them in the best places that we can not only guarantee employment, but also maintain programs, I think it's the best thing for kids. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is for administrators to have the capacity to move people where they're needed, so that we can meet kids' needs and use our folks in the most efficient way.
Well, based on almost the estimated number of 60 people, do we know the ratio of teachers versus staff, like a rough idea?
That's a good question. John, I would say that it's a higher proportion of classified to certified, because over the last 4, 5, 6 years, we've had quite a bit of turnover in our professional staff. So there's fewer teachers in the ranks that have 15 years of time with us, or at the age 55.
Thank you.
Jerry, you mentioned the 250 or 225,000 in savings. Is that a net number, or is that a gross number in terms of their salaries? Because we pay them a certain amount for early retirement. So
yeah, that would not include the
payout for the early retirement.
Because that's just looking at the savings to general fund.
That's out of management fund.
Yeah.
Because that I know it moves to a different fund, but
right.
The net difference
Correct.
is smaller than that number, but it moves it off the general fund.
Yeah, and I sometimes get caught up on that. That general fund is the one that kind of drives the buggy home, and so.
It's the management fund is just, as long as we keep our eye on it and doesn't get too far. And I know it doesn't count against the.
No, you're absolutely right. And the thing that the management fund has to be levied for, and so it is not without a cost.
Right.
But you still realize a savings.
A savings, a net difference, right?
Yeah.
I would move to establish the early retirement program for FY18 as presented here with a deadline of January 3rd.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the early retirement program as presented in the board book for FY 2018 with a deadline of January 3rd of 2018. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. The next item on our agenda is a request for approval to, I'm sorry, I was going to read the exact same thing we just did. How about the request to approval of a contract with Team Services for construction, testing, and inspection services in the amount of, and it is listed there in your board book with some follow-up data on page 49. Jerry, do you have some other information for us?
Yeah, this is a required service by the inspectors. And so what this service does is they measure and inspect the cement. They inspect the integrity of the steel. They inspect the integrity of the welds. Every project has an inspection company on it, and Tyler had put this out for bid. Team Services was the lowest bid, underbid the other company by about $8,000. But we had one at Jefferson, and you need one to do those kinds of inspections so it'll pass code.
And is this done so this is for the MHS Physical Education building.
Right.
Is this done as we go, or is it done once everything's all completed?
No, it's as they're mixing the cement for the footings, there will be an inspector there to measure the content of the mixture, and as the steel is delivered for the building, they will inspect the gauge of the steel, and I didn't realize that there is a requirement on a steel building that if you don't have welders with a certain certification, you have to have an inspection of the welds, which makes sense. All of those things go on, and there's probably some other inspections that I'm missing, but those are the ones that seem to stand out to me that were the most critical.
And if we're hiring this firm and they find something, right? Do we have the ability for the contractor or whatever to make sure that those things are?
Yeah, if they find, let's say that the cement mixture isn't to spec,
yes,
then the contractor would have to correct that. It would not be our expense because the specs outline the mixture, or that needs to, and the steel gauge is at a set, and if it wouldn't be, then it's we wouldn't have to accept that product.
If they do approve it, and something happens,
yes, they have a liability.
They do. Okay.
Yes. Although I'm going to be completely honest with you, how that has worked in the past. No, I
You have a better chance if
we just want to make sure it all goes well, and we've been very fortunate. But yeah, we probably could have included that in the motion that was made last month, but I felt like that it was a significant amount of money at $13,000, and I also thought it was good that this is one of those things that go part of a project that you have to take into account.
What are the wishes of the board on this item?
Well, I move to approve the contract with Team Services for construction, testing, and inspection services in the amount of $13,116 for the new MHS Physical Education building.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the presented contract with Team Services in the amount of $13,116. This is for the MHS Physical Education building. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Motion carries. The next item on our agenda is the third and final reading on the following policies, and I'll read through these very quickly. Some of these are brand new. Some of these the recommendation is to delete, not because they're not important policies, because they're being covered somewhere else, because it's a duplication potentially. And then in one case, I think we have one that's moving from one location to another. So personal records moving from the 700, it'll be 401.15. It's moving from a 700 series. 803, disposal of school equipment. 805, crisis management and response planning. 806.1, buildings and site long-range planning, that's new. 806.2 buildings and site surveys, new. 806.3 educational specifications for buildings and sites, new. 806.4 site acquisition, new. 807.1 maintenance schedule, new. 807.2 requests for improvements, new. 807.3 emergency repairs, new. 807.4 buildings and site adaptation for persons with disabilities, new. 807.5 vandalism, new. 807.6 energy conservation, new. 808 lease, sale, or disposal of school buildings and sites, new. 900.1 tobacco/nicotine-free environment, delete. 900.2 release to news media, internal unit news. That's a standard. 900.5 visitation by students, adults, groups, or agencies to the Muscatine Community School District. 900.10 news conference and interviews, new. 900.11 live broadcast or videotaping, new. And 900.13 advertising and promoting, new. That is your third and final reading on those policies. Lisa, have you received anything from board members on those? Okay.
As of Friday.
What are the wishes on the third and final reading of those policies?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve all of the third and final reading. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? And the motion carries. That takes us to our discussion and information portion of our meeting. Our next topic is the continued support of the Muscatine Ag Learning Center.
Yeah, and Director Bauer, if I misspeak or whenever you'd like to join in, feel free. Tim is also on the Muscatine Ag Learning Center board. For those board members that may or may not be aware of this, we are in a 28E agreement, which is a multi-agency agreement with the Friends of the FFA and with the community college in ownership of the Muscatine Ag Center. And this was, I think the initial agreement was around 2009, and the intent of that was that we would join together and it would be built, and it was, largely through philanthropic dollars, I believe. And then there was going to be a business plan that would allow it to continue and to pay for its function. What's become obvious over the last couple of years is that there is no business model for this to function. And again, Tim, when I misspeak.
No, you're doing fine.
Okay. And so that has become a concern, and it is operating really through subsidies provided by Muscatine Community Schools and Muscatine Community College. The other thing that has become obvious is that there is not necessarily a long-term solution for upkeep of this building. And so that was one of the things that got us concerned. Now, here's the situation that I feel uncomfortable with currently. We have been paying a portion to keep our subsidy payment. We've been paying out of PEPL. Since we're co-owners of this building, it's really, I don't think, ethical for us to make PEPL payments, because that's for lease, out of a building we technically have some ownership in. And I feel it is just the integrity of what PEPL was developed for was not to cover operating expenses, and I see really what we're doing is covering operating expenses. That's really a general fund expenditure. So we are currently at about $35,000 a year. So we would either have to say, okay, we're going to take that out of the general fund, or what I'm, I guess, floating out there is that it might be better for us to withdraw from the 28E agreement and enter a long-term lease agreement. Then we can use PEPAL funds for the subsidy. And you know, I think we have a commitment to make sure that that there's upkeep to that building. There was a lot of people in the community provided funds for that. It's a source of pride for a lot of folks in the community. But I feel like we have to make sure that we are above board on how we pay for that. So that's why I wanted to bring this to the board tonight, because if we were to do that, we would have to go forward and ask the Ag Center Board to release us. And I would say that we probably would, I would recommend we would waive, the way the contract's written, they would pay us a third of the value of the building, and I would say we would waive that. You know, that would be, I mean, we can't do anything that's going to put it in jeopardy, but I'm thinking that would be one response to this. And and Tim, anything you'd like to add to that? Tim acts as the treasurer.
Yeah, I'm actually the treasurer on the board too. So it's the board and the group that pushed hard to have that facility put in place did a great job, and they've got a nice facility. But as Jerry alluded to, I think the long-term management structure and how we've been moving forward, or how the intent of it to move forward, it's not quite what we would have expected, right, Jerry?
Yeah, you know, the agreement says we're going to hire a manager and all this type of thing, and
we had a manager at one time. Yeah, we had one, and there was one.
Went through a couple, right?
At least one that I'm aware of. That actually I didn't get on the board until after that position was vacated, and we just the board the organization hasn't had enough funding to be able to support that long-term management.
Right, that was the problem.
And that's an issue. There's a lot of volunteer hours to keep that facility going. The grants are not coming in like they did when they were initially kicked off. And even some of the community support in some areas has dwindled a little bit. So, but it's there. It's a great facility for what we needed to do, but as Jerry alluded, it's 10 years old and it's starting to look like 10 years old. So there's, I think, a new path needs to be somewhat defined.
You know, and my recommendation is that we would pay the $35,000 that we have been, and an additional $15,000 that would go into a building fund, because in 10 years from now, that building is going to need work. You know, and you have any building that has livestock in it, there's wear and tear, and you have a lot of things are not going to last forever. So, and that would give that protection. You know, I think the other thing is, and I've said this a number of times also, is that if you ask people down the street whose facility it is, most people probably say, well, it's the schools. So if something goes, if it's not kept up, I think we will get credit for that. There's, like I said, there was a lot of donations to make that happen, and it is, the ag program certainly takes advantage of that facility, and I wanted to include this on as a discussion item tonight. But I wanted to let the board know that probably in that December Muscatine Ag Center building, I'm going to bring forward some kind of a proposal, again contingent upon board approval. But I do think we either have to say, you know what, just take it out of the general fund, which will be, as we're trying to cut back expenditures, that will be difficult. Or we find a way that we can legitimately say it's a lease and we pay it out of PEPAL. Some people would say that I spend a little too much time worrying about the integrity of that, but that's important. I wouldn't want anybody to ever come back and say, that money was not spent the right way. if I'm gonna err, I'd like sure we err on the side of caution.
So right now, we're paying $35,000 a year. What's the total outlays for the building in a year?
I did bring that data tonight. It's the annual budget's about $110,000.
Okay.
So,
And what are the programs like the Vet Tech program with the college?
the Vet Tech program from the college is a high user of the facility. There are events out there, sales, different shows.
Horse,
Horse therapy.
and all I could think of is lodging. That's not the word I'm looking for.
Stall rental.
Thank you.
Boarding.
So there's
Boarding, thank you.
Boarding for, horses and cattle and sheep.
And is that income?
Yes. But that's a small part of the income. There's
also
still
some crops
sponsorships.
some crops are raised.
There's crops that are raised, which local industries support, so their input costs are very low, if not zero. A lot of volunteer hours and resources are provided by local farmers and different ag services in the community. So, it's a very valuable facility for youth to learn agricultural tools. And Jerry and I have had a lot of conversations in regards to that. But I think the biggest concern is just the way how it's being funded, and we need to just be cautious. I don't feel we're doing anything wrong, but there's a separation there that would make us feel more comfortable. Jerry and I have talked about this for a while.
Yeah.
So.
About after every meeting.
What's the downside for the Ag Center if we do this?
I think probably if there is a downside, it would be the appearance that we're not part of the agreement. But
from a financial perspective,
it's a win.
Same amount.
Win for them.
Yeah.
It's a win-win. I think it might give them a little more flexibility in doing some things that they want to do.
I think the other thing that it does, when I say long-term, I would say a 10-year lease, because I think that's probably fair. The other thing that gives us 10 years of stability, because there's nothing that says we have to pay anything.
That's right. We make that determination every year.
And so, and not that we would ever probably do that, but, in a public setting, you can never say never. Things can change, and so I think it gives the Ag Center some long-term stability. It really gives us a clear payment strategy that's above reproach. It would be a lease then.
And I don't think it needs to be perceived at all that we're not supporting the Ag Center, because from a financial perspective, we're still providing the same support.
It would increase.
It would increase.
I thought you mentioned increasing
actually
it
increased,
by 15,000.
Yeah, and I would say we would want to work in the lease that money puts into a capital fund.
Do we, for the long-term success of this, do other people have to step up in a similar way, or do what we're talking about, or is it just us that needs to do it?
I think the business community feels probably like it has stepped up and done what they were going to do. They provide the initial dollars. The college is somewhat limited in that they don't have a PEPAL fund or something to draw on, so it is just a general fund expenditure for them. And really, Friends of FFA they don't really have a money-making mechanism there. Other than fundraisers, it's very hard to raise money for capital improvements. It's much easier. It's easy to raise money to erect a building. It's really hard to raise money to maintain a building.
Yeah. So if the college backed out, and I'm not saying that,
Right.
I don't even know if they have they're annually agreeing to this, and some years said no. Does that put our lease and those other things in jeopardy then, or do we need other partners to join in this longer term agreement?
If they would say, and their lease amount is about half of what we pay, but they use a very small area.
Yeah.
And that's based on square footage.
So if they were to, for some reason, leave the agreement, I don't know who would step in necessarily and fill that void.
Right. So, I mean, would we then have a 10-year commitment that is unsustainable? I'm just...
I think then the question goes to, we have a 10-year commitment, and the Ag Center Board's just gonna have to make it work.
Right.
I mean, that would be my feeling. And because we do not have an unlimited supply of funds to commit to this either.
So how's the insurance gonna be, would that be paid in that? I don't know how it's paid now.
The insurance paid out of the budget
Yeah.
for the
Okay,
facility.
so that would just
Separate.
be.
Yeah.
And that's carried by who then? The Ag
Yeah.
Ag Center.
Friends of the FFA?
Yeah. Well, it'd be by the Friends of FFA. Well, it'd be the Ag Board.
The Ag Board covers the insurance.
Now, would the Ag Board be exempt from taxes?
It's still, yes, yeah. Because both, the Friends of the FFA is a tax exempt organization.
And I guess kind of building off what Aaron was asking about, if we do lock ourselves into a 10-year lease and let's say support were to dwindle from other supporters, are we left with a choice of either continuing to pay lease on an increasingly deteriorating structure or upping our commitment to maintain it?
I think, and I think that's a really good point. I think when we would go to write the lease, we would want to kind of think ahead to some of the what ifs.
Right. We need some kind of a,
yeah.
I don't want to say escape clause because that's not what I mean.
No, but there needs to be some contingencies in place.
No, as any lease,
things can change.
Right. Any lease, you're paying for something.
Yeah.
And if it falls below what your expectation of payment is, then you'd have an exit strategy there. But, you know, I don't want to make this sound like a doom and gloom for the Ag Center.
No, absolutely not.
And, which we're not. It's just, I think it's a better way for them to go forward and let them do some things that, you know, right now with our partial ownership and so forth, it makes it a little bit, I don't even know if it's called a partial ownership, but it's hard to read the agreement.
You know, this kind of agreement is really helpful in building something. After it's built, it's not as, maybe as
operational.
Yeah, it's just a little bit of an awkward situation when you have a situation like this.
Is the Center Board the only other party to the 2080?
I'm sorry,
Is the Ag Center Board the only other party to the 2080?
Yeah. Well, the three parties are Community College, right, Friends of the FFA, and us. Yes. And of that, the bylaws specify 9-member board. Two from the school district, 2 from MCC, 2 from Friends of the FFA, and then the remainders come from the community and ag business.
Sure, but I guess will we have to secure the ratification of the community college to withdraw as well?
Yes, because 90% of the board will have to agree.
Got it.
And I really, you know, my intent with this, Tim said, you know, I just want to make sure that there is, that it's sustainable and that we have a plan to take care of that over the next decade.
Well, yeah, and I just, by hearing you, it sounds like there's more than just us involved that would maybe need to make that commitment.
Yes.
Right. That's what,
right.
That's just what I was trying to.
Right.
Right.
And, you know, and this facility does support a number of youth in the community. I mean, we're all invited to the annual banquet, and there's a lot of youth, 8th grade school or middle school on up. They're using that facility. It's being used for STEM events on a regular basis. So it gets a lot of use.
It does. So I will keep you informed of kind of where the conversation goes, and I guess I just wanted to make sure the board understood the rationale behind this thinking, and if anybody, you know, had, you know, oh my gosh, don't go down that road, you know, we can have an opportunity to think about that. But like Tim said, we've had a lot of conversations about how do we move forward with that situation.
If anybody's got any questions, feel free to give me a call, or if you need any information, I can provide it too. So, they actually are meeting Thursday morning, I guess. Which I
Correct.
will be
We
absent.
will be absent, so.
Guess who we'll be talking about then, huh?
Probably
Yep.
Jerry and I.
All right. Anything else on the Ag Learning Center?
No.
So our next item is the Muscatine Community School District Foundation structure.
Well, I wanted to bring this forward in that we've had some just really great people on our school foundation board. And as you know, with our move towards using the community foundation for investment and for distribution, the nature of the work of the foundation board is somewhat changed. And I don't know if I necessarily have anything to offer other than, I think, moving forward to ask people that have busy jobs and to be on a board that really is only going to have probably an annual oversight type of meeting, I think is awkward. But we do need that the school foundation really needs to stay intact. That's important, because if anything would ever happen to the community foundation, we would want to have that as the fallback, that it's still in place. I'm thinking that probably the foundation board probably would not need to meet more than maybe a couple of times a year to hear an update from the community foundation on the status of our funds and the status of the program. I have thought about, I've read through the bylaws. I don't know if there's anything really preventing the board from saying the school board is going to be that foundation with maybe the audit committee, or however we might want to do that. Like I said, I'm not offering any suggestions now, but I do think we need to look at that differently than what we have been, because we've had some folks that have a lot of financial expertise, and I think they would be kind of disappointed if they were kind of relegated to that role. And the audit committee that we have I think has been really strong for Tom, and so there's lots of different ways we can look at this, but I felt like this board probably needed to maybe have some conversation about what they would like to see going down the road for that organization.
Does anybody have any specific thoughts this evening? Do you want a little time to think on that?
How many people are on the board currently?
We have 7. Of that, the superintendent, high school principal, and guidance counselor, head of the department, head guidance counselor is one of. So there's those 3 plus 4 others. And I would say, and I would say this, if Jared were sitting here, or Carrie Hawkins, they probably aren't going to have the depth of knowledge, as I'm pretty sure I wouldn't either, to ask some of the questions about the investments.
Is there an opportunity for any of our current board members to be a part of the community foundation? And
that's a good question, and I don't know. I'm not sure how the community foundation gets its members, to be honest with you. And I would also say it may not be in best interest to mix those two, because we still are an independent foundation, and if you mix those, not that anybody would ever do anything wrong, but there certainly could be something that could be construed as a conflict of interest.
Yeah, not a representative of us there, but a conflict more.
Yeah,
right. As a member of it.
Yeah. Well, I would be happy to explore some options.
Sure.
I think that'd be great. Give us some recommendations. Give us a little chance to think about this.
Yeah, and nothing has to be done in the next 60 days, but moving forward, we do need to think about that, and what what direction we would like that school foundation to go.
Makes sense.
Can you circulate those bylaws?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is the first reading on the following policies. This is a pretty short list tonight. 504.6, participation in athletic events, that's student attendance, recommended for deletion. 505.3, communicable diseases. 506.4, graduation honors. And 601.25, homework, recommended for deletion. If you have any comments or questions, I would ask if board members could send those on to Lisa to share by our next meeting. That would be great. The next thing is our October financials, which start on page 80. Tom, that has your name written all over it.
Sure does. Okay.
He says with excitement.
So presented is the treasurer's report revised for August 31st. There was a couple adjustments as we're going through reconciliation, so I just wanted to make sure the ending balances for August were the same as the beginning for September. So in September, treasurer's report is on the second page of the board book financial part. Only one thing I'll point out is the PEPL fund timing of the property tax payment we got in October, so nothing to worry about that balance. And then the next 4 pages are similar to what was presented last year, but revised a little bit. And that's just the monthly, basically our monthly budget, revenues and expenses. And then the second page would be the difference between budgeted and actual. And then the third page to that is our monthly budget by those categories. So, and we're still in the process of building that line item budget and that, but this is where we're at now. I'm feeling very good that we've captured a majority, obviously, of our budget. And then the unspent authorized budget report does include those approvals of SBRC authority, and where we're sitting right now is in a keeping our percentages in the where we need to be. The activity fund financials, I'm just going to skip over because there are that's a new report, and it was pointed out to me today that there's some errors in it, so I will get that revised and make sure I have an accurate report, I guess, for next month. And then the last page is school nutrition, so I have no other comments unless the board has any questions.
Tom, I know you said you were going to do some work on the activity report, not specific to this, but if an activity has a question on what their receipts look like for the year or for a time period, I'm assuming they're able to see that.
Okay, so good question, because starting November 15th, I have about 50 reports ready to be emailed out to all activity sponsors, athletic director, and high school principal on specific fund balances for each group. So they will, and that'll detail year-to-date revenue, year-to-date expenditures. So they do get that info. They will start getting that information starting this month.
Okay, so they'll see it regularly, just so that, as I'm assuming they're responsible for their own budget, so that they're knowing where they're at and.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, that goes to them monthly?
It's going to start going to them starting this month.
Good deal.
Okay. Any other questions for Tom?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Just a few quick announcements then before we adjourn on some upcoming events. So November 15th through the 16th, which is Wednesday and Thursday, the Iowa Association of School Boards Convention will be held in Des Moines. There's a few of us that are headed up for that for a few days. November 22nd is a 2-hour early dismissal. November 23rd and 24th is the Thanksgiving break, and there will be no school those days. And then we all come back together as a board on December 11th. We'll be here at 7 p.m. at City Hall. Are there any other announcements for the good of the cause? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
And all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Meeting
Aye.
adjourned.